I wanted to make movies because I love the experience. I love the adventure. If I don't like a story, if I don't love it, if I can't commit myself to it, for me just to put up the money, that's not producing a picture. I'm not trying to make a carbon copy of what Hollywood buys. I'm not trying to make, a movie like the last movie that was a success. I've always wanted to do something new, different, imaginative, exciting, interesting, but always I had in mind that these were movies that I thought people wanted to see. I studied music all my youth and in my early years, and a director, like a musician, has to have a good sense of timing.
93 Nassau Street.
When you watch a movie, it's like when you're listening to a score rises and it flows and it has a melodic sense and it carries you with it. That's what I think you look for in a director. I represent, for example, Joe Losey, who did all the Pinter pictures and the go-between. I helped Melvin Van Peebles put together his first movie called Sweet Sweetback. I even gave him some money to finish the picture. And Bob Altman, he was a special case in a certain way because he was famous for being difficult. But, I'm a kid from Philadelphia and I'm not easily intimidated. I first met Brian De Palma in the late 60s. I was an agent at the time in Los Angeles. And Ed Pressman was a producer. He told me he had made this film called Sisters, and that he was having difficulty arranging a distribution deal. And would I be interested in representing him? And he told me about the film was directed by this new director, Brian De Palma. So he set up a screening at the Rizzoli screening room. When the film was finished, I said, I like the film. I think I could sell it. But what I like the most is the director. I think the director has a big future. I like suspense films, and he's got a good knack and a good timing and a good visual sense. So anyway, I did set up the film with American International Pictures to release the picture, and it did well for them. But I thought Brian could be one of the greatest directors of all time.
Surprise. Hey, now you know you're not supposed to cut the cake until you make a wish and blow out the candles.
I think it was 1973. That at the end of the year, I was quitting the agency business. I was going to produce films. And Brian was my client then, and he came to me with Paul Schrader, an up-and-coming writer. We have a story we'd like you to read that hopefully you'll want to produce. It was called Deja Vu at the time, but later the title was changed to Obsession. Obsession is about incest, and that's very daring and very challenging. Nobody wanted to do it. That's quite a challenge, isn't it? To make a film that nobody wants to do, right? So I went out and raised the money. I said, Brian, I don't necessarily think we should think of this as a picture like Sisters. Sisters was more like an independent film. And I said, I want you to make a major studio picture. And he said, well, we got a budget of $1.1 million, and I don't know, movies like this at Fox cost $2.5 million. I said, we're going to do it. Somehow we're going to get it done. Because I think if we don't do it that way, it won't have its best chance for success. So I said, the first thing is I want you to meet Vilma Zsigman. Vilma Zsigman, in my mind, was one of the great cameramen of all time. So I said, all we can pay you, Vilma, is about 30 your salary. We worked every angle in the books. Anyway, but he loved it, and he was eager to do it, and we got Vilma, so that was the start. I wanted this new composer I knew. His name was John Williams. And I wanted John Williams to do the score. And he said he wanted, Benny Herman. And I was a little frustrated because I really wanted to work with John Williams. But to me, there was nobody ever greater than Bernard Herrmann for movies, or particularly this kind of movie. So I said to him, I have to say, okay. So Bernard Herrmann says he wants to make sure that he's going to have the support he needs to do the score for the movie. I said, what's it going to cost? He said, $40,000. I said, you got $50,000. And then he turned to Brian. He said, you know, Brian, for a producer, he's not so bad. He said, but let me tell you something, wise guy producer. That's the way he talked, you know. He said, you know, your script, it's very good, except it needs a new third act. And I said, tell it to the director. I thought the original story, the third act, wouldn't work, right? But I said I would do the film with them, but they'd have to change the third act. Up until the last minute, they didn't change the third act, but eventually they did. And that's what's in the movie. And we got the picture made without any release, without any studio. So it was a big risk, but I ended up selling it to Columbia Pictures, and it all worked out very well. That was pretty successful. And one day, the phone rings, and it's Brian. He says he wants to come see me. So he came and he brought me the script to Dress to Kill. So he says, how soon will you read it? I said, by the time you finish your lunch, I will have read the script. So I read the script, and he called me back, and I said, I read the script. I think it's great. He says, well, I'm coming over to see you. I said, I'm warning you before you walk in the door, okay? If we don't make a deal, I'm going to probably kill you. And anyway, we made a deal. But I loved it. I thought it was going to be a great movie. Among the best 8-9 minutes, I think, of film I've ever saw was the museum sequence. I remember I said to Brian when I read the script, I don't know how you're going to sustain this whole period without any dialogue. It's holding 8, 9, 10 minutes with no dialogue. I said, how's that going to work? Maybe you're going to have to do a voiceover, a stream of conscience or something. He said, no, George, I'm sure it's going to work. I'm going to do it with the pictures. And he did. We changed the ending on that one, too. At the end of the movie, the girl who lives through this horrendous experience, played by Nancy Allen, she's having a nightmare that the doctor is coming to cut her throat. She wakes up screaming. And the guy with her says, you must be nuts, right? And he walks out. And that's the end of the movie. And that's not the way it ended. That ending evolved to something different. That was better. And Blowout, Brian had written I guess you would call it a treatment, but it was really just an outline of the story points. And I think it was only like 5 or 6 pages, but scene by scene. And he asked me to read it, and he said, one day we should make this movie. So I read the thing. I said, I think we should make it now. So I said, Brian, suppose I can get you a deal, pay or play, to make this movie before you write the script. He said, are you crazy? I said, no, I think I can do it. You do? I said, yeah. I'm going to convince them that everything that they want to know about the screenplay is right here in these 6 pages. And they should agree to make the movie. He said, I never heard of that before. I said, well, you're willing to, if I get you the deal, if I get you all the money to make the picture before you write the script, are you willing to make the picture? He said, yes. And he laughed. And anyway, I closed the deal, and that was the beginning of the picture. Before you know it, we had the script, and I was very happy with the script. I thought we were going to make a great movie. I was very excited. And every actor we gave the script to, and I can't even remember who they all are now, turned it down. We started even do location scouts in Philadelphia, figuring that we'd get an actor. And one day we're in Philadelphia, and he calls me up, and he said, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I sent the script to John Travolta. I said, oh, do you ever hear from him? He said, yeah, he wants to do the movie. Getting the money just on the outline and getting John Travolta to do the script is what caused Blowout to be made. It was the most expensive picture that Filmways or AIP had done up to that point. And I was delighted that John was willing to do it with a smaller company, but he liked the movie and Brian enough to want to do it. But all these movies, I mean, Obsession was a very controversial movie. It was a guy who fell in love with his own daughter and didn't know it. Dressed to Kill, I mean, the blood and gore, that picture scared a lot of people, you know? And the character of Michael Caine played was not a usual Hollywood character. And Blowout, again, I mean, he's making a movie about a sound man. Brian was doing some daring and exciting things. And while we were making those movies, you know, almost concurrently, the industry was starting to change in that period of those 3 movies. One of the main changes is they wanted high concept, you know, and I wanted a good story with good characters. Suspense movies weren't exactly in vogue at that time, but I thought these were all great, and these are kind of movies that audience would want to see, and I always loved them. I had a wonderful, in my opinion, and I hope Brian will agree, that we had a wonderful collaboration together. I was just a utility, helping him get it done. So I made some contributions, but, you know, he really made all the final decisions. We worked together on the scripts, we worked together on the casting, we worked together on almost every aspect of the movie, and I found that to be particularly exciting. I kind of miss that today. It's become more of a business than the producer's role is more get the money today. So, did I answer your question? I'm not sure.